to Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville. Okay, imagine you've got some sort of major event coming. You're graduating, you're going to a new job, you're hitting one of those birthdays with a hole in it, so a major birthday. And you want some sort of, you want to either buy for someone else or for yourself something to remember the event by. A watch is a great thing to buy. In these circumstances, we often don't know exactly what we should get. It's often that the first watch we're buying for ourselves, and we don't know if there'll be others, or we're buying for someone else and we don't really know where it fits in, but we definitely want to buy something that they would wear. So in this particular case, what you're really wanting is that quintessential dress watch. In either case, what you want is a watch that can be worn pretty much by anyone in any situation, as the case may arise, but is also memorable enough and will last a lifetime. Depending on who you are and what you are, how much money you have to spend is always an open-ended question. I'm going to arbitrarily say $1,000 US. That might be way too much for you. That might be far less than you're willing to spend. I'll do other shows which talk about what happens if you've got less or got more, but right now we're talking $1,000 US. And what we're talking about here is that one watch that might be the only watch this person ever owns, or that you ever own. So what we're really after is some criteria around this buy, and so what you're talking about is probably mechanical. Not to say high quality watches can't be quartz. There are some great quartz watches, but they are rarer and they're harder to choose, so I probably wouldn't recommend them in one of these circumstances. You probably want something that's pretty tough, useful, not universal, but a useful standard for what constitutes toughness is water resistance. So every watch I present today is going to have a water resistance of at least 100 meters. A couple have water resistances of more than that. I'm not going to bother going into it because it's not really relevant. You don't really want precious metals for a watch like this, especially at this price range, because you'll be making too many compromises elsewhere. So predominantly we're going to be talking steel watches, with one exception. But as much as that, it's really about the design. What you need is something that can go from bathing suit to dinner suit. So what that means is probably a more subdued, classic and classy set of colours. Probably no bright fire engine reds or Kermit greens here. We're talking reasonably subdued colours. I think no dive bezel. I don't think dive bezels, okay, theoretically anyone can pull off any watch if you're up to it, but there's no guarantee that you are that guy or that the person you're buying the watch for is that guy. So I would generally steer away from anything with a dive bezel for this dressy tool watch. You don't want it too thick, and I'm going to arbitrarily draw the line at too thick at around about 12.5 to 13 millimeters. We will break that potentially, but that should be where we hope to stay. And generally I'm going to say leather or steel bracelets. You want to probably stay away from rubber for this dressy tool watch. Again, there is one exception in my list where I'll possibly raise the idea of going with a rubber strap, because it gets you a watch in this price range, and be prepared for changing that out later on. So anyway, in this price range, we're really in coarse watch territory. And if you've done any research at all into something like dressy tool watch, field watch, everyday watch, around about $1,000 US, YouTube will give you thousands of selections revolving around Nsow, definitely, Hamilton, definitely, Longines, most likely, and good chance you've seen a lot of Mitos as well. So none of those are going to be on my list. There are some great Seikos in this price range as well. They're not going to be on my list for one terrible reason, that no matter how good a Seiko watch is, and I love my Seiko watches, I'm not sure if they, at this point, they carry the sort of clout that you want to make in this kind of 1K one watch gift. So I've gone and done some searching all over Amazon, all through eBay, all through Joma Shop and Chrono24, and found 10 watches which I think are really interesting, not so obvious choices for this one watch, 1K one watch dressy tool watch selection. Now, admittedly, a lot of those places I just mentioned are secondary sources, so we're not getting ADs here. But on the flip side, some of the watches I'm going to be presenting have MSRPs of $3,000 or even $3,500, and I guarantee that if you look and you're careful, you can get all of these for at or just under $1,000 US. Okay. So the last thing is I found 10 watches in this category. Now 10's a big number and it's going to make this presentation really unmanageable. So what we're going to do today is treat this as part 1, and I'm going to go through 5 not so obvious 1K 1 watch selections for dressy tool watch all day every day. Okay, so let's get into it. Now the first watch I'm going to recommend is possibly my most left field, maybe my most ambitious, and the one that could be the most polarizing, and that's the Genre Card Terrascope. Genre Cards are really interesting. It's one of these really brand new old companies. So it was relaunched in 2012 under the Kering Group, but leveraging the original Daniel genre card, which goes back to the late 17th century. So is this company 7 years old or is it 300 years old? I'll let you make the choice there. It doesn't really matter when you get down to looking at the watch. A quick one, if you haven't heard of the Kering Group, they actually swing a very heavy bat in the luxury goods market. Within the fashion area, they own Gucci and Yves Saint Laurent. When we're looking specifically at watches, they're the group that owns Girard Perregaux and Ulysse Nardin. So they are a serious watch company to be taken seriously. Genre Card is the entry into this group, but they're high quality, well-made watches. So if we look at the Genre Card Terrascope, what you see is a watch which is clearly inspired by those 70s masterpiece divers, particularly the Gerald Genta Patek Philippe Nautilus. It is undeniable that this is a homage to that watch, but then on the other hand, if you are going to pay respect to a design, what better than the Nautilus? And I think we should say it is a true homage. It's not a replica, it's not a copy. When I look at this watch, I don't get the feeling that someone had the Nautilus sitting next to them saying, how do I make it look the same? It was clearly taking styling cues, but it's not a copy, and I don't think you should be concerned about that in any way, shape or form. Okay, now let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. This is a hefty lump of a watch, 44mm diameter, 50mm lug to lug, 12.5mm thick. So that's a big chunk of steel, and if you aren't a bigger guy, that could be a struggle for you. Okay, its movement is a JR60 as totally expected. That is not an in-house movement. That's actually a rebranded Suitor SW200. But what's wrong with that? It is a perfectly acceptable movement, and if we are talking around about $1,000 US, that's what you're going to get, is something like the Suitor or the ETA, which you're about to hear a lot of coming up soon. Okay, MSRP on this is $3,000. $3,000 US. However, you will not ever pay $3,000 US. On the other hand, you can find this for around about $1,000 US on places like Chrono24. Be aware, you will need to search. You can't guarantee that every day there will be a dealer there waiting to sell you this watch, but they do come up and it's worth getting. Okay, it is a brute of a piece, big and thick, and that cushioned case makes it even more hefty and imposing on the wrist. So if you can pull it off, it's a great option. If you can't, there is a 39mm version as well. However, that seems to be much newer, and I haven't seen that coming up on the secondary market yet. It could be worth keeping an eye out for though. So that's really the Genre Card Terrascope, and now let's move on to the next watch. Now for the next watch, we're going to do something completely different. We're moving from an obscure little brand most of you may never have heard of to Rado, a member of the Swatch Group, but not one of the big players. Rado is, as I said, buried within the Swatch Group, and in some ways lines up with Mido and Longines and these other mid-level Swatch brands. But it's also very interesting in that it's been allowed or it has demanded that it find its own way in a particular niche, and that niche is high-tech ceramic materials, and that's what we're going to get here with the Rado D-Star, which is the watch I'm recommending now. Okay, so it's silver tone ceramic base with a ceramic bracelet, silver tone hands and indexes, very simple markers, but incredibly hard, essentially scratch proof. You can beat this thing and nothing will dent it, nothing will mark it, and in 20 years it'll look as though it's just come out of the box. I really must warn, there is a theoretical risk that you can shatter these ceramic cases. I say theoretical because it's one of these things I keep hearing about that it could happen, but I've never seen it, nor have I even seen an instance of it. Now, I'm sure if I go searching on Google, I will find someone who's got an image of a cracked ceramic case somewhere, but no one in my circle has ever managed to physically break one of these things. So some details: 41mm case, 47mm lug to lug, just 11.4mm thick. It's a caliber 658 movement, but being part of the Swatch group come as no surprise. It's an ETA under all that. So it's an ETA 2824-2, absolutely standard for this price range. Just like the genre card, this has an MSRP of $2,700, and you will never ever pay that amount. At the moment, you can go on Joma Shop and pick this watch up right now for $800 US, and I don't see that changing much in the near future. So you get a really solid ETA movement, durable and well finished case, a beautiful Swiss watch for a man or a woman at this size for someone who wants that handsome watch they can wear every day. And again, something I'm going to say a fair bit is, isn't that exactly what we're talking about with this selection? The next watch up is from a brand which I think people talk about but don't know a lot about, and I'm close to that myself. I've never actually worn one of these watches. I have seen them. They're actually quite beautiful in the flesh, but bear in mind, haven't had one on my wrist. And what we're talking about here is the company Ball, and in particular the Fireman range. So Ball's followed a surprisingly typical 20th and 21st century trajectory. An American brand that for whatever reason found itself owned back in Switzerland. It remains based in Switzerland and is a Swiss brand, but is now entirely backed by Chinese money. That is a strangely typical story for many modern brands. What is atypical is, through all that, Ball's managed to maintain its independent and idiosyncratic style. Born from the literally life and death requirement for precision timekeeping in the US railroad system in the late 19th century, Ball is all about railways and making sure that two trains don't end up going in different directions on the same piece of track at the same time. And these railway routes flow through the entire brand. Whether you're looking at the range names like Fireman, Trainmaster, Engineer, things like 19th century style scripts on the end of the second hands in some of the language of the iconography on the front on the dial, and even there's some odd little quirks like the use of tritium gas tubes as opposed to superluminova for lume. And all of these things flow through from the very top of their brand right down to the bottom. And Ball normally does trade above the level that we're talking about here. Most Balls come in at the 1500 plus, probably the predominant meat of their range is around $2,500 US, but the Fireman routinely comes in at $1,100 and can routinely be bought for less than that. So the model that I'm going to look at here is the Ball Fireman Glory Black, but there are many other options in this range, and I'd suggest you can search around and find the Fireman that you really like. Okay, so it's a bit smaller again, 40mm case diameter, 48mm lug to lug, 11.5mm thick. It's got a Ball RR1103 movement, but scratch the surface and guess what? That's an ETA 2824-2, exactly the same as the Rado, And as I said, that's going to be a recurring theme today. Price, MSRP is normally about $1,100, but you can pick one of these up at Nsow, a store I've used and would trust, for $800 right now. It comes with a really nice clean this one comes with a really nice clean sort of semi-matte, semi-gloss finish. It's both classy and utilitarian. It's got these strange the tritium gas tubes, which give you a bit of a light show from a lume perspective. It's got a lot of really nice little features on the case design, dial and hands, which really set it off, and they give it that really sort of a little bit classy, a little bit dressy, a little bit fun, casual, perfect aesthetic for this dressy tool watch, which is, as I've said before, the whole core of what we're talking about today. So the Ball Fireman series, have a look. Now, back to the swatch group, but another corner of the group that you may have never heard of before, and we're talking here about Union Suitor, and in particular the Union Suitor Virodate. Union Suitor is perhaps the forgotten corner of the swatch group. It has its roots in the Suitor region around about 1890s, but actually this factory closed its doors in very early 1933. Reopened in 1994, modified again as it reopened as Suitor Original. Added the name Union back to its title in 1996, and the whole group was purchased and became part of the Swatch Group in the year 2000. Union Suitor normally trades a little bit above this, and again, in another recurring theme for today, we're buying into a much richer brand by coming in at its entry level. So and what happens is, in this particular case, we're really benefiting from some trickle down of some technology that you'll see later. So Union Suitor describes the Virodate this way: a classic elegance that's perfectly suited to both everyday wear and special occasions, with a touch of style wherever you go. And in a sense, that just nailed what we're talking about today. So it's a 41mm case, 49mm lug to lug, 9mm thick. One of the benefits that Union Suitor brings is we're moving up the ETA movement ladder. So this is still an ETA movement, but it's an ETA 2892-2, which is a much newer, ultra thin version of that movement, and it gives you that 9mm thick case. Price is, the MSRP on this is $2,700 US, but as with many of these others, go to a place like Joma Shop right now and you'll pick one up for $800 US. So that's a bargain in anyone's language. Depending on how you look at this design, it's either dismally boring or stunningly minimalistic. It really, for something that is so plain, I think it could actually be quite divisive. So I think this is a watch that you'd really want to know, if you're buying for someone else, you really want to know their aesthetic. But on the other hand, it's probably not going to be offensive to anyone, which probably means it fits perfectly in the sort of range that we're looking at. The date versions that we're looking at here come in a couple of different colors. They're very, very simple. It'll go with pretty much anything. You can get it on either a calfskin band or a metal bracelet. In this price range, I think you might struggle to get the bracelet version, but you never can tell. I would note that this is also available in an even smaller version of 34mm, but be cautious, you will be giving up 50 meters of water resistance. So if you do find the 34mm at this price range and you go for it, it's essentially the same watch, but this time with a 50-meter water resistance. Not a killer, would normally exclude it from this review, but if that's fine for you, there is that option. Okay, so what's up next? So our final watch for today continues this theme of sneaking into probably richer brands than you might expect by coming in at their very entry level. And now we're talking about the Zinn, and in particular the Zinn 556. Okay, in this particular case, it's interesting to think about how did Zinn get a watch. Now, they're a brand that normally bats around about the $2,500 US mark. How are we getting $1,000 US? Well, Zinn is famous for its engineering, whether that's the tegmented steel case, which is ultra hard and scratch resistant, or strange things like copper sulfate capsules for dehumidifying the interior of a watch. These are fantastic and almost Zinn exclusive innovations, which are noticeable by their absence on the 556. With the 556, you don't get any of that super crafty design. What you've got instead is just a beautifully simple design executed as only Zinn does. 38.5mm case, so the smallest case size that we've looked at here. 45.7mm lug to lug, so it'll fit pretty much any bloke's wrist. 11mm thick, running the ETA 2824-2 movement. So it's not the ultra thin movement, but they've squeezed it into an 11mm case, so that's not a bad outcome. MSRP on this watch is $1,100 US, but you can pick them up for less than that. There's an Australian dealer I've used called Define. They'll sell you this watch right now for $900 US without the Australian taxes. Sorry, if you're in Australia, it's going to cost you a bit more. The design is simple and classic. It's obviously inspired by the pilot watches that Zinn has been putting out, but at the same time it is in no way a heritage piece. This is definitely a contemporary watch. You get a sapphire case back that shows off all the niceness at the back. It is fundamentally just an ETA movement, but you know, gold rotor adds a bit of flash. At the end of the day, you do, actually I should stress here, you do get two choices. There's the A version, which I'm assuming stands for Arabic. That gives you Arabic numbers at the 12, 3, 6 and 9. And you get the I version, which I'm going to assume stands for indice. And in that case, no numbers, just the indices. My personal preference is for the A version with the numbers, but I do recognize that makes it a little bit less design oriented, perhaps a little less dressy. And if that's what you want, go the indices. There's a real horses for courses thing. I should also stress it comes in a range of other colorways if you want, and you can get this with a variety of mother of pearl kind of finishes as well, or blue. So yeah, that's it. Really nice, really classy, some interesting options in there for Zinn, and a great one watch collection for 1K. So there you go, my first 5 picks for the not so obvious options for the 1K one watch selection for a special occasion. Some of these are easy finds. Just go to Germashop, just go to Amazon and you'll find them. Others are going to require a little bit of searching, but trust me, they are there if you want them. And if you've, it's not like these events sneak up on you. You will have time to go searching for it. Some of them are pretty hefty, some of them are pretty small. I'm quite confident that there'll be something in these 5 for pretty much anyone. If they're not, wait for the next episode, part 2 of this series, and I'll give you another 5 not so obvious 1K one watch selections. Okay, as I said at the top of this show, I am desperately trying to build this channel. Please, if this was helpful to you, please give like the video, subscribe for more content, or just to see the second version, the second part of this. If there's something you don't like about this, please leave it as a comment in the comments section. As I said, I'm trying to improve, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks very much, and bye.